Good evening, friends. Welcome back to Pediatric classes. I hope you all are staying safe. I got a little busy with the work schedule, and that's why I got a bit delayed in uploading this video. So today we will discuss about the congenital lung malformations. So I'm going to share my screen. So if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe and share with your friends. So about the congenital lung malformations, they are actually a group or spectrum of anatomical anomalies of the lungs and the respiratory tree. It accounts for around 5 to 18% of all congenital anomalies, and these contacting airways are properly formed by around 16 weeks of gestation. But please note here, the first development of the respiratory tract starts appearing by around 4th week, and it progresses in various stages. About the stages, yes, the PG students, NEET aspirants all need to know this, because this actually, if you see, it evolves. The first one is the embryonal stage, where the period is from 3 to 5 weeks. This was a question very much asked by her. That is, what is the stage of gestation? The development starts. It starts actually by around 4th week of gestation, when there is a formation of lobar bronchi. Up to the lobar bronchi, it starts. Then pseudoglandular stage, when all the bronchioles of the conducting system starts developing by around 5 to 16 weeks. And there is formation of columnar or cuboidal epithelium. A canaliculus stage is from 16 to 24 weeks. There is differentiation of epithelium or distal acinar development. And there is a saccular stage from 24 to 36 weeks, when the alveoli and the terminal sac starts developing. That is from 24 to 36 weeks. And proper the alveolar maturation, as you all know, which starts beyond 36 weeks with all the surfactant and other developments. Okay. So about the CLMs, that is one another thing I forgot to mention in the intro part. This class actually, what we are planning to do is we'll be taking the theory part, and then we have to take some questions which were asked previously, either this class or maybe after going to this in another session. So anyway, this CLMs are actually divided into broadly divided. Those involving the bronchopulmonary tree, those involving the vasculature, and those involving both lung and vasculature. So what are the things which in CLMs which include the involves the bronchopulmonary tree? This includes congenital pulmonary airway malformation, CPAM, previously known as CCAM, that is congenital cystic adenomatoid malformation, congenital lobar emphysema, that is the infantile lobar hyperinflation, that is our CLE, then lung agenesis or hyperplasia complex, bronchogenic atresia, bronchogenesis, etc. And some things are CLMs are involving only the vasculature, like for example, absence of main pulmonary artery, anomalous origin of left pulmonary artery, anomalous pulmonary venous drainage, pulmonary AV malformations, etc. And certain things involves both the lung and the vasculature. That means like Smith's syndrome, bronchopulmonary sequestration, etc. So what is this? This one thing is like about the pulmonary underdevelopment. Many times we happen to hear terms like agenesis, aplasia, hyperplasia. But do you know what exactly is the difference between this? Actually, agenesis, actually we can divide. There is a development of bronchus, then there is lung parenchyma, then there is vasculature. Just remember these three headings. So in case of agenesis, what happens is, so in case of agenesis, there is, 1 second. So there is no bronchus, there is no lung parenchyma, and there is no vasculature. So there is total agenesis. Whereas in aplasia, there is actually blind and in rudimentary bronchus, but there is no lung parenchyma or related vasculature of the lungs. Okay. Whereas in pulmonary hyperplasia, there is bronchus, there is a rudimentary lung, but please note the lung is rudimentary. Even vasculature, there are blood vessels, but they are less in number. If you take the number of alveoli in case of this area, again it will be less. So everything is less. So this is one thing we should understand when we use the terms like pulmonary agenesis, aplasia, and hypoplasia. I like this slide very much because even I was a little confused when I started preparing for this class. What exactly is the difference? And multiple references we did, and then only I could understand this is the exact difference. So what are the associated anomalies with CLM? We can have associated cardiovascular problems like patent testis arteriosus, or patent foramen avail, then gastrointestinal problems like tracheoesophageal fistulas, imperforate anus, skeletal abnormalities like limb anomalies, vertebral anomalies, etc. Also, let us discuss a few of the important CLMs. One is about the CPAM, that is CCAM, that is I already told, congenital pulmonary airway malformation or congenital cystic adenomatoid malformation. What exactly is that? It is a benign lung lesion that appears before birth as a cyst or mass in the chest. It may prevent the normal development and functioning of the lungs. And there are two types, that is microcystic, when there are lots of cysts seen in that particular area, or a macrocystic, that is a single cyst seen in that area. So it is typically diagnosed during the 20-week ultrasound as a bright white mass of the lungs. Additionally, in such cases, we may see the heart is displaced or the diaphragm may be flattened and the healthy lung tissue is squeezed. And most of the CPAMs stop growing by around 26 to 28 weeks of gestation. But if the CPAMs are associated with a hydrops fetalis, the prognosis is really bad and the condition is lethal. The CPAM is usually managed by surgical removal in childhood, or even nowadays we can do a removal of the CPAMs antenatal period or immediate postnatal period also. Anyway, we have to remove that is because it hinders the development of the lungs. This all depends upon the size of the CPAM and the type of the CPAMs. There is a risk of serious infection and a real some potential for a malignant change rarely. What are the symptoms of CPAM? The patients may be symptomatic or may not be symptomatic at birth. They can have respiratory distress. Most of the cases may present with recurrent pneumonia or noisy breathing. So this is one X-ray of CPAM. Then there is actually in the right side, you can see a multiple cystic-like lesions which are seen on the right side of the lung. Now, next CLM which we want to discuss is the pulmonary sequestration, which is the second most common CLM. This is characterized. What happens is there is a portion of the lung is there that does not connect exactly to the tracheobronchial tree. This has a systemic arterial supply from the aorta. It may be thoracic aorta or from the abdominal aorta. How will the patient present? The recurrent lower lobe pneumonia resistant to antibiotic therapy may be a clue to the diagnosis. So, whenever you see in some other session, I will take a session on recurrent pneumonias, but please note that pulmonary sequestration is one of the important cause for recurrent pneumonias. So I just got this image from the net. This is like there are two types actually. Okay, there is an intralobar sequestration when the sequestration is seen inside the lobe, and when there is an extralobar sequestration. So there are two types. It's shown in two different areas. So please note what are the differences we will see. This is a little bit elaborate slide, but please note incidence of the first side. This side is the intralobar, and this area will be the extralobar. Okay, so incidence of intralobar is more common compared to extralobar, but gender predisposition, there is nothing in intralobar, whereas in extralobar, men is more predominantly affected. Laterality, intralobar left more than right in both intra and extralobar sequestrations. One main point to note here is intralobar has the same visceral pleura as the parent lobe, whereas the extralobar, what happens? They have a separate visceral pleura. It's like separating. So, what about the bronchial communication? Intralobar has a bronchial communication, whereas extralobar does not have any bronchial communication. And location, I already told, they are located inside the lungs. So, posterior basal segments, they are actually located, whereas in extralobar, they are present above, below, or within the diaphragm, predominantly on the left side. What about arterial supply? This is a very favorite question of student aspirants. Systemic arterial supply is one thing of intralobar and extralobar. Okay, whereas the pulmonary venous drainage is the venous drainage for intralobar, whereas extralobar, they have a systemic venous drainage. Remember that intralobar is actually almost having the same parietal or the same visceral pleura of the parent lobe. So drainage is to the pulmonary venous circulation, whereas extralobar have a systemic venous drainage. What are the associated anomalies? Whichever is more common, associated anomalies are more common in case of extralobar, rarely in intralobar. Okay, presentation, intralobar presents a bit late with history or adulthood with history of pulmonary infection, chronic cough, etc., whereas extralobar may present during the first 6 months due to respiratory or feeding problems. What are the radiographic features? Intralobar will be seen as a homogeneous consolidation with irregular margins or uniformly dense mass with smooth or lobulated contours. Whereas extralobar will be seen as a single well-defined homogeneous triangular opacity in the lower thorax. It may even actually present in other areas of the thorax also. So this intralobar and extralobar are really important. Okay. Now, coming to the intralobar secretion, I just put an image. See here, this always just shows us a lower lobe pneumonia. That is why many times these patients will present with a recurrent lower lobe pneumonias, and we tend to take it as a lower lobe consolidation and treat it like that. So, whenever you get a patient with a recurrent pneumonia and with a recurrent pneumonia in the same lobe, consider a diagnosis of pulmonary secretion. Don't hesitate to do a CT and get the diagnosis. And this is the findings is seen in case of an intralobar secretion where there is a homogeneous soft tissue mass. There can be a focal emphysema or a hypervascular focus. But soft tissue mass is the most common finding which we actually see. Now, next is about the pulmonary hyperplasia. What exactly is the radiographic features? So, in this picture, if you actually see, there is an opacification of the hemithorax. There can be marked ipsilateral mediastinal shift, and there is a herniation of the remaining lungs across to the midline. So if there is this is a hyperplasia. In the previous slide, we discussed what exactly is the difference between a hyperplasia, aplasia, agenesis, etc. And about the Smith's syndrome, this is a favorite question for the NEET aspirants. What exactly are the components of this Smith's syndrome? That is actually lung hyperplasia. They can have both lung and also the vascular involvement I told initially. So lung is hyperplastic. The same side pulmonary artery is hyperplastic. There is pulmonary venous anomalous drainage, and also lung has a systemic arterial supply. So these are the four components. So lung hyperplasia, ipsilateral pulmonary artery hyperplasia, anomalous pulmonary venous return, or lung has a systemic arterial supply. What about CLEs? It's another important congenital lung malformation, that is our congenital lobar emphysema, also called CLO, that is congenital lobar overinflation. Why am I taking both the terms is like, and some of the articles when you they may just mention a CLO. So please note the CLO and the CLE both are same. It's a rare anomaly of fetal lung development in which an obstruction of the airways lead to enlarged overinflated lobe or lobes of the lung. It's a life-threatening congenital anomaly leading to respiratory distress even in the neonatal period or in the early childhood. And what about the close differential diagnosis? It is pneumothorax. But please note here in CLE, the pulmonary vessels extend to the periphery of the hyperinflated lobe. And there is no visualization of a pleural line. Whereas in a pneumothorax, you won't be able to see the pulmonary vessels. We always trace the pulmonary vessel to the periphery. In CLE, you will be able to trace the pulmonary vessels to the periphery. This is a very important question. What is the most common site of involvement of congenital lobar emphysema? It is the left upper lobe. The second will be the right middle lobe. But if an MCQ is asked, the answer is left upper lobe. What is the underlying defect? It is often inadequate cartilaginous support of the bronchus, and there is an airway collapse leading to a ball valve mechanism and air trapping during expiration. The severity of the symptoms may depend on the size of the upper distal lobe or the compression of the lung tissues around it and the degree of displacement of mediastinum. They may appear at birth in 33% of cases, by about 1 month around 50% of cases, and most of the cases will present in early childhood or by around 1 year of age. So this is a picture of a congenital lobar emphysema. You can see this is a picture of a CLE. Okay. So what about the management of CLE? The management of CLE is usually a resection of the affected lobe, but in asymptomatic and mildly symptomatic patients, conservative approach is now warranted. Now, we need to actually go and discuss about the previous year questions. I'm just confused whether we do it now or should we do it as a session? Because if we do it now, all the things will be thorough. Actually, you will be knowing it. So you have to, read up about all these CLMs once more or revise, which I mentioned. But the thing is, there many questions are asked about, though it is a small topic, Many questions are being asked. So I thought I'll discuss it now only. So what is the most common site of CLE? I discussed some time back. It is none other than the left upper lobe. And which of the following life-threatening congenital anomaly in newborn presents with polyhydramnios, aspiration pneumonia, excessive salivation, and difficulty in passing an NG tube? Okay, that is none other than the tracheoesophageal fistula. Previously, I have uploaded a detailed video about tracheoesophageal fistula, explaining about the types and all the related questions of TEF. So, if you have not seen the video, please go back, refer back to the video session and see through the video on TEF, exclusive video on TEF. Okay. Now, this is another question which we saw from the previous year question, that is the respiratory system develops from. The answer is the A question, the choice, ventral wall of foregut, dorsal wall of foregut, ventral wall of midgut, and dorsal wall of midgut. The answer is ventral wall of foregut. The most common type of foregut cysts are. So I told initially there is cysts are also one type of CLMs, but I'm not discussing detail about cysts, but these are the most common type of cysts. What are they? There are different types of cysts. They can be bronchogenic, esophageal, enteric, or mixed. The most common is the bronchogenic. And please note here, the site of cysts, they are usually located in the hilum or in the middle mediastinum. Fifth question is, a neonate presents with respiratory distress and enlargement of left upper lobe and mediastinal shift to the right. What's the most probable diagnosis? So, CLE, alpha-dystrosy, pneumonia, cystic fibrosis. So, I told you that there is present with respiratory distress with the enlargement of the left upper lobe. It diagnosis none other than CLE. What is the blood supply of bronchogenic sequestration? Aorta, pulmonary artery, pulmonary vein, cystic fibrosis. That D choice is a little bit wrong. So, what about A, B, or C? The answer is, I told you, bronchogenic sequestration, they get the systemic arterial supply. So, it is aorta. It can be thoracic aorta or abdominal aorta. So, what is Cartagena syndrome? It's a very favorite question for UGs and PGs. So, please go through it. The answer is chronic sinusitis, situs inversus, and bronchiectasis. Choice number A. Chronic sinusitis, situs inversus, and bronchiectasis. Next question. A 2-month-old infant has had a respiratory stridor since 1 month of life, but otherwise well. Physical examination unremarkable except for moderate inspiratory stridor and retractions, which are worse on supine and better when the patient is prone. Most likely diagnosis, reactive airway disease, laryngomalacia, viral croup, and aspirated foreign body. So the most probable diagnosis is choice B, laryngomalacia, because the laryngomalacia becomes better when the patient is put on a prone position. What about the next question? The most common cause of stridor in infant and children: congenital subglottic stenosis, laryngomalacia, vocal cord paralysis, and foreign body in airway. The answer is choice number B, that is the congenital laryngomalacia. There is another one, fill up the blanks I just put, that is the narrowest part of upper airway in children less than 10 years of age. That is the subglottic area. So this is in short about the CLMs and a few questions related to the CLMs. Please refer back to the previous video on TEF to get a detailed account of the tracheoesophageal fistulas, and read up about CLMs. In this short video, we have discussed most common causes of CLMs and some of the important questions which are asked, which were asked in the previous years. So next, I thought like I will come up with some videos with some MCQs related to the things, some topics, along with the theoretical part, a short theory description and a few MCQs related to the topics. Okay, so if you like this video, please do subscribe and share with your friends. Don't forget to like, comment in the box or comment box. Okay, thank you. Stay safe.